Okay, there we go. Well, welcome. I'm glad you all could join today, and we're going to just start first with a very, very brief meditation, and then go into a conversation about what are some of the alternative medicine approaches to working with our lung health, especially acupressure, and then we'll have a chance for a meditation. So if you could just pause for a moment, you can close your eyes if you wish, settle into the chair or the floor, wherever you're seated. Feel your sit bones connecting to the chair, our feet on the floor, and drawing lines of energy from our sit bone, from our tailbone, down through our feet, down into the earth. Let's connect in with the energy of Mother Earth right now. Coming deep down, as deep as you need to go to anchor in. Many of us do this kind of meditation where we come here to get grounded and rooted and connected. And we draw up those resources right now from Mother Earth, drawing them up through those channels in our body, through the bones deep within us, through our great central channel, through our chakras, through these meridian flows. And imagine as that energy moves up through our body, we come to the top of our head and out through the crown, up into the heavens, connecting in there with the bigger pyramid that we create with each other, drawing these lines of energy, these channels of energy down around each of us in their various locations, forming a great big pyramid for this time and this space. We take a breath, and as we exhale, we release the things on our mind, other things that we brought with us, and we focus right now our attention on being curious and exploring and learning. Coming down with that energy down into our bodies, let's pause for a moment here at our chest, at the lungs. Just say hello to your lungs. Hello to your heart. We thank ourselves for being present to have these conversations. And on your next breath, when you're ready, you can go ahead and open your eyes. Well, this conversation about healthy lungs and heart it came out of a conversation that I had with several people about what would we do if we had friends or family who had health issues, and what is the recommendations that I would have to talk about how we keep our lungs healthy, how we boost our immune health. And so I began exploring with a few of the various points that I was aware of, doing some reading. And one thing I want to say at the start here is that this program, this conversation that I'm having, is purely educational. I'm learning, we're all learning. This is not medical advice. I know there's a lot of information out there on the website now, a lot of information being taken down because it is perceived as giving medical advice. So I want to state that right up front at the beginning, that this is about a conversation for educational purposes, for us to learn, to be curious, and explore what are some alternative medicine approaches, alternative health approaches to our own lung health and how that relates to our heart. Obviously, if we're short of breath or have family or friends short of breath or lung issues, we encourage them to go to the doctor. But we do know, as a lot of us are holistic practitioners in this call, and we know that there are many resources available for us. Some have been highly researched, others may not be researched but have stood the test of time. Others are newer but rely on a lot of similar concepts of things that we already know. And so I think it's important that we at least have these conversations, that we be aware of what is available to us, and that we can look at things like acupressure points or other practices that we can simply share with family and friends as a way for them to notice what happens within their own body. Well, I guess the curious thing about lung health is that there are so many different things that could be happening that cause difficulty breathing, from seasonal allergies to cold, flus, viruses. Some people have had scarring from previous injuries. Posture is a huge reason why a lot of people have difficulty with lung health. I've noticed just spending so much time recently on the computer, I collapse down as I'm sitting here all day long, and that impacts my ability to breathe. So there's a lot of things that we can talk with our family and friends about that help us to be better with breathing. And one of the first important things that I think, that when somebody is experiencing difficulty breathing or having a lot of issues with coughing, catching their breath, I think it's important to encourage them to have some kind of daily practice. A lot of times that fight or flight response kicks in, we have a stress response and we stop breathing. And so it's important that we have a meditation practice, that we encourage people to breathe gently. Sometimes when we try to take a deep breath when we're having respiratory issues, it's hard to take a deep breath. And so the importance of just being calm and centered and quiet and breathing. And to be able to name our fears and our disappointments, as well as positive affirmations, and setting goals and intentions. Many of us have used a pyramid meditation. We may use prayer or other things that we want to use to set our intention of how we want to be, how we want to move towards greater health and wellness. So whatever these techniques are that we do, we reinforce those with perhaps parallel breaths, essential oils, having an altar, and putting our intentions for the day there. So my intention for this session is that we will all breathe easier. I talked with my acupuncturist a month ago, being very curious about what was happening in the world in terms of acupressure for respiratory issues, and he sent me an article that I found very fascinating, looking at some of the symptoms that a lot of people are having right now related to respiratory issues. There's often a dampness, a thick white coating of the tongue, difficulty with bowel movements. There's this glue-like material or gunk that gets stuck in the lungs. Even though there's phlegm, there's a dry cough and not a very productive cough, and so it's getting stuck in that middle burner of our body, the upper and middle burner. And a lot of issues with both the lung and large intestine not communicating with each other. And so part of the issue that happens when we have respiratory issues is that we don't just eliminate the breathing problems by killing germs, but we need to move the pathogens through our body and eliminate them. And so we need the large intestines to help as the stuff drains from our lungs into the large intestines and gets eliminated from our body. And there's also been a condition with the yang channels being what's called feeble, but there's a lot of disruption in our whole system whenever we have acute respiratory distress and other symptoms. Some of the acupuncturists in China have been using lung 9 and large intestine 5 as 2 points that have been proven very helpful recently. And for those of you that aren't familiar with these points, if you think about where your thumb is, do the thumbs up position. The the palmar side at the base of the index finger is where our lung 9 point is. And on the other side of this tendon is the large intestine 5 point. So you can almost kind of pinch those points on either side of that tendon. And those 2 points, often, I've experienced it myself at night when I lie down in bed. That's when I tend to notice how heavy my chest feels. And when I hold those points, either individually or together, I find that there's a lifting and a movement of the energy within my own chest. I also know from some of the things I've been reading that there's a lot of issues with triple warmer, because the upper burner is your respiration, middle burner is digestion, lower burner is the elimination. And so these upper and middle burners are not working effectively. The heart, the pericardium becomes impacted. There's a connection between triple warmer and the spleen, stomach meridians. And we know that from Chinese medicine that the spleen has to do a lot with the movements of the fluid in the body, and that this combination of both the lungs and large intestine kind of being stalled or stuck is a cause for concern. And for those who have studied the 5 elements, I find it very fascinating that we have the yang, which is on the outside, are not, they're kind of weak and feeble. The inside are often pretty depleted and not functioning. We have the triple warmer, or the sanjiao, is really, I think, part of some of the ripple effect, but we also know that kidney and liver are often involved whenever we have a lot of health issues. It's important from a detox perspective that we do detoxing to help keep us healthy. On the right-hand side of this model, we have the stomach and spleen impacted. The lung and the large intestine are not communicating. And so when you look at it, it's almost overwhelming to know where do we start, because so many things are impacted. I mean, the good news is we can start anywhere and get anywhere, so that when we do start holding some of these points, it can start things moving in other directions. But what I'm really aware of is that when we have a lot of issues with our lungs, it impacts so many other meridians. There's a lot of things that we can do to protect our respiratory system, and you can Google, there's all kinds of resources out there, from supplements that you can take to detox programs. Of course, getting our sleep and rest and exercise and fresh air is important. Staying away from people who are sick is important. There's a lot of stress management techniques that also help, and part of that is that we're calming that whole vagus nerve and the sympathetic nervous system down, so that allows us to breathe easier. There's a lot of people who use aromatherapy, and while the FDA will say we can't use aromatherapy for medical conditions, you can work with someone who is a certified aromatherapist or has had training with oils, and that sometimes those can be very effective for people. Again, this is things you have to explore on your own and research, and what works for you. Some people it helps, other people it doesn't. So it's important that we look at what are the options out there and what is the most effective for people. There was an interesting podcast from a naturopathic doctor that I found interesting. In addition to talking about the supplements, he also talked about things like an alkaline environment. When we have that, it helps to eliminate a lot of the pathogens that we have. And so that might be something to keep in mind if you have a family member, or if you yourself are having issues with your lungs, is what kind of environment, what's the internal environment like? Another good suggestion that I was interested in was, he called it a castor oil suit, basically massaging himself from the neck down at bedtime with castor oil, putting on sweatpants, and then going to bed, and allowing that to detox from his body. There are many, many holistic resources available. We could have talks on each of these techniques, because there's a lot of people out there using these effectively to help deal with various health conditions. There's not always a lot of research, and so there is a section of the world who like to have evidence-based double-blind studies. And I like to quote one of our co-presidents for Soul Lightening, Liz Monson, talks about working at a heart transplant unit and saying that we don't do double-blind studies with heart transplant patients. You use what works in the moment, you try various things, it's different for every patient, but you sometimes have to use your common sense and your intuition of what are the things that might potentially help this person. And I think that we're at a point in our world situation right now where we also need to be looking at what are the things that are working. I personally have noticed that as I look for research on acupressure, I'm finding a lot of articles and a lot of websites that talk about acupuncture, but we're not hearing a whole lot about acupressure. We don't have a lot of the research out there, except I would say for Save a Stress Release through Soul Lightening. We do have quite a few articles now with research on that particular protocol, but we're not hearing about the benefits of acupressure. And I think many of us know from, especially those in the zero balancing and soul lightening communities, that the acupressure is a very powerful tool that we have available at our fingertips. So when I make decisions about what kinds of things I like to use, I look at, has it stood the test of time? Is it going to make a positive impact on my health? And do I believe it will work? Because there's the other part of that, the placebo effect. You know, who knows whether things are working because it's the actual technique that's working, or if it's my mind that is influencing it. And if I believe something is going to work, there is a huge possibility that it will work. And if I listen to all the news and stories and negative reports I'm hearing in the world right now, I can get very fearful and I can give into that of, oh, I'm going to have this scenario happen to me and have health issues happen. And while that might be a possibility, I think we're also planting that nocebo effect. We're planting a lot of ideas in people's minds right now. And I think it's important that we stay positive and look at what the benefits are for using a lot of these holistic practices. I'm going to go over a number of acupressure points. There's plenty out there that could be used. These are ones that I've used on myself. The governing vessel 14 is one that I like to use because of all the yang channels that go through there. And when people are having issues related to the depletion of the yang channels, that's a good point to hold. It's great for fevers from the research I've done. One of the points I wanted to mention is I like the Deborah Bleeker book, Acupuncture Points for Handbook. And she gives a lot of great information about each of these different points. There's other sources online that I like to use. But one of the things my acupuncturist taught me is to use a Chinese spoon, it's a gua sha technique of kind of gently scraping over that GV14. For those that are not familiar, that's at the C7, the little hump in the back. And then gently using the spoon and rubbing over that. And what you're doing is stimulating the yang channels with that. So that is one possibility that people might be able to use with family members. Another one, we've talked already about the lung 9 and large intestine 5 points. We can also use the point between the thumb and the index finger in the web space. That's a source point. It's our point 32 in the soul lightening work that we do. So that's a great point. We normally think about it's large intestine 4. It's a point that we often use for pain, but it also has a lot of good benefits from a respiratory standpoint for sore throat, the congestion, clearing that out. So these are all points that are great to consider. In addition, I like lung 1. If you come to the top of the shoulder and come diagonally rolling off of the humerus, the head of the humerus, you get into the soft tissue right up against the bone. And this is a great point for the difficulty breathing and the wheezing that comes. It's the entry point of the lung. And a good one to combine that with is here at the elbow. So this point at, I like to just grab my whole elbow and then curl my fingers in off of the bone, and my finger often will come into that large intestine 11 point or immune point. So that's a nice combination. What I'm doing is holding 1 on the one side, lung 1, along with the large intestine 11 on the other side. I often do that at bedtime and hold that combination, and then I'll switch and hold the other. Another great point for coughs is if you're doing the thumbs up and you're hooking your thumbs together and pointing your index finger up the radius bone, up the long bone, the point where your index finger comes is lung 7, and that is a great point for cough and bronchitis and helping to get rid of the phlegm. So this is, again, these are documented for thousands of years with Chinese medicine, that these are the points that are used for this. And stomach 26 is a good point for, I'm sorry, 36, for the Chinese talk about this point as being a point that helps with any kind of internal illness. And so it's a nice combination to use with lung 7. It helps to strengthen our whole immune system and everything happening within the body, and also with shortness of breath. So the interesting thing that I learned from reading the Deborah Bleeker book, I had a little boy with respiratory issues about 2 months ago, and his mom wanted to know what various points. I was not able to get out to their home, and so I gave her this explanation of lung 7 in combination with these other points. The stomach 36 point, which is kind of, I think of it as the chicken soup point. It's one that helps you with any kind of a basic illness. The large intestine 4 point, here between the thumb and the index finger. The large intestine 11, which is up here at the elbow, and stomach 40, which is known as the phlegm point. That is a point that's halfway between the knee and the ankle, so that halfway point, and then off to the side about 2 finger widths off of the shin. If you're having phlegm issues, you'll find that point is very sore. And I found that using these combination of points with this little baby helped relieve a lot of the congestion and phlegm and respiratory issues he was having. So I was real pleased to find these combination of points. So that might be something to keep in mind as a possibility. I think of those points, probably the stomach 40 phlegm point is a real important one to have in our back pocket, as well as the stomach 36. Other points that I like to consider, we've talked about a lot of the health issues right now in the world are related to some triple warmer issues. So at the wrist, we have the triple warmer source point, and if you come up 3 finger widths, we are at triple warmer 5, which is on one of our extraordinary vessel master point. And opposite that is PC 36, pericardium 36. So you could hold at the wrist, but then coming up 3 finger widths, we are resetting some of the extraordinary vessels with this point. So it's a great point for us to know about. The back of the head, the gallbladder 20 point for any kind of sinus issues. And then liver 3 is another good point for boosting that detox. It's a source point for the liver. It helps open up the channels for all the meridians. So these are points that many of us are aware of, that we've used in other settings. And then spleen points, I think, again, spleen has to do a lot with that movement of fluid. So if you think about things getting blocked and stuck and pasty and not moving in the lungs, we want to help get that fluid moving. And sometimes drinking water might help a little bit, but it isn't the only way to get the fluids moving. So the spleen 6 point is on the inner thigh above the ankle, or inner leg above the ankle, about a hand width above, and this point is helping to regulate the stomach, spleen, kidney, and liver. And so that's a good point to know, especially also because it's helping with blood issues. And when I think about blood and issues related to blood, oxygen is an important thing that gets carried through the blood. And so if we're not getting oxygen to all the areas of our body, if we're not getting the blood flowing, we can get into a condition where it can be life-threatening actually to not be getting all that oxygen to the brain. And so I think it's important to know that point, as well as our spleen 4 point, which is another, it's the master point of the Chiang Mai. Angelique, I know you're on this call, and you always say, go back to the Chiang Mai, so that's an important point also. Again, these all have to do with the fluids and digestion. There's also a component of fatigue with the spleen, and so these are good points to also know. So if I had to work with kids, I probably would be encouraging them to hold points at the wrist, elbows, knees, and toes, ankles, because there are so many points. We know from studying Chinese medicine that there are a lot of the source points or junction points around these areas. And so encouraging people to hold at the wrist, you're getting a lot of really good juicy points there. At the elbows, holding below the knees, we use these points a lot in the Save a Stress Release. At the ankles, anytime on each side of the ankle. And then of course, working with the fingers and toes. That's always a great way to teach children to do these, and holding the fingers and digits. So those are kind of go-tos for someone who is in the hospital. You know, that might be something to suggest they do with their free time if they're not doing other things, is to encourage them to just massage all those areas of their body. So a couple combinations I like to use. I'm going to teach you I think three of them here real quick, and then we'll do a brief meditation. The heart 1 point is underneath the armpit area. And if you use your middle finger to hit that point, you can also hit the lung 1 point with your thumb up here at the shoulder area. If other people like to do diagonals, and so if you want to do heart 1 on one side and lung 1 on the other side, that's another good combination. I use this one a lot at night when I'm going to bed also. And I've discovered that when I hold points bilaterally, for me personally, I don't feel as much of a flow of energy happening in the body as when I'm holding 2 different meridians. So I like to do a combination of the 2 different meridians. So that's a point we might want to think about, that particular combination. Another great combination, this one came from Sally. So if you come to underneath the armpit is our spleen 21 point. It's at the bra line, about a hand width down from the armpit. And so putting your hand underneath, and your other hand grasps the whole elbow. And the important thing about this is that we are getting earth points. The spleen is an earth element, and so we're getting earth points at the elbow here. So we're getting triple warmer 10, small intestine 8, and large intestine 11. So that has been a really good combination for me for opening up the whole lung area and helping me to breathe easier. And then you can switch and go to the other side. So again, we're going to come to the spleen point under the armpit and then grasping the whole elbow. And that's an easy one to instruct people to do. I've noticed from a posture standpoint that continues to bring me forward quite a bit. So after this one, I like to stretch back and squeeze my shoulder blades, and kind of like chicken wings, bringing them back together. Or if you have a pop can between your shoulder blades, you're kind of crushing that can between your shoulder blades. So bringing that back and opening up this pec area. And then Susan taught me this the other day, grasping the back of your hand and circling your wrist. And then with your index finger, you find that point between the index and the middle finger, or I'm sorry, index and thumb. And then you can bring your hands to your heart. And so we're getting a lot of really good points again there at the back of the wrist, especially I'm thinking about that triple warmer source point is really an important one right there, but there's so many other ones: pericardium, lung, heart, large intestine. So this is a nice relaxing point to hold. So again, we're encircling the wrist, the back of the wrist, using that index finger in that web space, and then bringing your hands to your heart. So I think what I want to do now real quick is, let's see if we can. Oh, okay. I want to do the next poll and launch that. And so I'm going to have you re-rate, and those that didn't have a chance yet, go ahead and rate your ability to breathe right now on a 1 through 10 scale. 1 is easy, no effort. 10 is maximum effort, difficulty breathing. And then you'll scroll down and rate your anxiety on a 1 through 10 scale, and then hit submit. And I'm just looking here at Beth made a comment about specifically working with COVID-19 patients. I've been very intentional about not talking about COVID-19 for this talk because I know so many people are putting information out there and it's being taken down. And I think it's important that we broaden the picture to look at our lung health, and we have so many family and friends who already have compromised lung health because of asthma or seasonal allergies and other things, and we know they're already at risk, and we want to be able to have tools available and share. And so I want this to be educational. I want it to be accurate. I want to have resources to back me up. I've had training, a lot of us have had training in acupressure, and we know personally this works with our own clients. But I think it is important that if you know people, that you do share what you know. And again, letting people know you do what feels good to you. You know, use yourself as a guide. Obviously, we're not going to be holding points if we're not feeling good. My guess is that most of the time people are going to be having improved health, and they'll move towards greater wellness and well-being. It's great if you want to share this with other people, but I've been kind of intentional about trying to look at a bigger picture of just lung health in general. With my background as an OT, I've worked in the past with people with COPD and other breathing difficulties, and so it's important that we're giving them tools, especially the alternative medicine approaches that we often are not finding out there in the general public. So thanks for that comment, Beth. And I'm going to go ahead and end the polling. Just quickly share the results. Looking at how well you were able to breathe. And anxiety levels, so good. Thank you for doing that. So I'm going to go back to sharing my screen. And all right, let's go ahead and do a meditation using some of these points that we talked about. And as you inhale, I invite you to think of the mantra, I move towards greater health and wellness. And as we exhale, I release what no longer serves me. And I encourage you to breathe gently at first and then slightly increasing your lung capacity as you're able to. We're not forcing this. And I will also give you some guidance during this, but I would prefer to not do a lot of talking because I feel it's important that we have silence and that still point to allow us to kind of resettle and go inward and look at what is really going on with my health, accessing some of that soul wisdom. So I invite you to just pause now with me, and let's start with gentle breathing and hands either on your chest or one up on the lung area and the other one on the heart area. And just notice how you're breathing. And I invite you to put some little tiny fulcrums into the area below the clavicle. There are a lot of important points along here, the kidney 27 point, here at the base of the sternum, and the clavicle is great for that whole chest area and breathing. And as we move on over through our soul lightning point 19, moving on, that was stomach 13, moving on over to lung 1. And these are actually into the bone, releasing the tension there. And then I invite you to also do the same down each side of the sternum. You can go on the ribs and between the ribs. And the purpose of this here is to start releasing some of the tension at the bone level, and also to activate some of those acupressure points along here. And as you do this, perhaps expanding your lungs, opening up the lungs. And I would say this is also, for those of you that have the acupressure balls in the bag, this is a great time to use these on the back. And you can spend a lot of time opening up that lungs from both the front and the back by using those acupressure points. And I know Sue's on the call. She's been doing quite a bit of yoga with Seva. And so I've noticed that when I do a side bend and reaching my hand overhead, it helps me to open up that lungs. And I've been out of yoga for so long, but I'm realizing that really is a great way to stretch and open up that whole rib cage. So I invite you to just take a moment and lean to the one side if you want to have one hand down towards the floor and the other hand overhead. Sorry, it's kind of hard to see me. And then the other direction. Good. Now let's take one hand, let's do one hand in the heart, 1 point under the armpit, and the other hand on the opposite lung 1 point. I encourage you here to send love from your heart, out that heart meridian, down your hands to the little finger, and send love to that lung point. And we'll switch and do the other side. Obviously, if we were doing this on our own at home, we would be holding it for as long as needed till we feel a connection between the 2 points. Right now, we're just sending love to our lungs, who work very hard for us. Think about that oxygen coming through the heart and into the rest of the body. From there, I'm going to have you slide your hand down to the spleen point at the bra line, spleen 21, and then with your other hand grasping your elbow. And when you get to this point, then relaxing into it, perhaps tucking your pelvis, resting back in the chair for support, or feeling the support of the floor. Here, envision the flow of a stream. You can imagine that flow through all your body, cleansing it, washing away toxins, things that no longer serve us. And then we go to the other side, under the other armpit area below that, spleen 21 at the bra line, and then grasping the elbow. Next, I'm going to encourage you to encircle your wrist. And for those who want to look at the specific points, we have lung 9, large intestine 5, triple wormer 4, pericardium 6 here at the wrist, or above that, we can get triple wormer 5, pericardium 6. And on the little finger side, small intestine 5 and heart 7. Small intestine on the back, heart 7 in the front. So all of those points we're holding when we're encircling our wrist. You can bring your hand to your chest. And the other side. Next, we come to our knees. I noticed the last time I did this that we only worked on the upper body, and it felt afterwards like things were stuck, and we want to move things down the body. So coming to our knees, if you put your hands on the top of your knees and rest your fingers over the edge of the knees and spread your fingers slightly, your ring finger will probably be right about that point of stomach 36. It's between the two bones. This time we envision that flow of energy coming up through our feet and bubbling spring at our feet, up through the legs, up through the abdominal cavity, and up into the lungs. We can imagine energy from the earth, the heavens, coming down through our crown chakra, falling like a waterfall, flowing freely down through our lungs, cleansing the lungs, down through the abdominal cavity and out through our legs and feet. So just breathe some parallel breaths. Next, we'll come to the ankles. For those that want to just cross your ankles one over the other and breathe, you can do that. If you want to bring one leg up to the other, to the knee, go ahead and hold the points around the ankles. We're actually aiming for those right below the ankles, kind of where we grasp our heels when a lot of us do body work. And also liver 3 between the first and the second toe, about halfway up or a third of the way up the metatarsal. And spleen 4 in the arch. And I have my other hand crossed over. You can't see it now, but I'm holding that 3 yin crossing, that point that's about a hand width above my ankle on the inner leg. And then touching in with your toes. And then you can complete that on the other side. Grasping first the ankles. The top of the foot's another easy way to do this instead of getting that liver 3 point. If you just put your hand across the whole top of the foot. And at the arch. And my other hand is about a hand width up on the inner part of the leg at 3 yin crossing. And then your toes. And let's end with a hug. And then a stretch back. And a forward bend. I'm going to give you one more pull to do. Again, rate your ability to breathe on a 1 through 10 scale, and then scroll down. And I will be sending out the notes from my PowerPoint and some articles to those of you on this call. So yes, Heather, you will be receiving that.
I didn't get a poll, Deanna.
Okay. Check to the bottom of your screen and see if you happen to have, mine says poll at the bottom. That got diminished in the.
No, I didn't get one either. We don't get to have that. I don't think we get to have that. Only the host gets them.
Okay, then I'm going to relaunch the polling.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I didn't get it either.
Let's try this. There.
No.
You see it now?
No, I got it both times before, but I didn't get it.
Last time when I did it, it took 3 shots. Try it again.
Not happening.
No.
Nothing yet.
All right.
Terry Haig got it, yes? No.
Well, what we'll do is the first number is breathing and the second number is stress. If you want to put that in the chat, you're welcome to. I'm going to try it one more time here. I'm going to minimize and then redo that. Relaunching. Oh, the joys of technology. Did we get it?
Yep.
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 Whew. Third tries a charm, right, Alvina? Look at those numbers coming in. Woohoo. And I'm going to end the polling. And those were very low this time. 1,
Wow.
Did change. Yeah.
7, and again, low there.
Good change. Very nice. Mhm.
So real quick, I'm going to go back to sharing my screen one more time. Oh, where did it go? There it is. And there we go. So there are a lot of online resources, and you'll get this in the follow-up email that I give you. Just reminding people the Save a Stress Release Protocol is on the Soul Lightening website for free through May 15. Or there's a great app for the emotional freedom technique that I like. They specifically have some free meditations right now for the COVID virus. There's a lot of other resources here that I've used before. There's also an inner smile meditation that's being streamed for, I think through the, is it the end of May? I don't remember, but anyway, take advantage of those. So these are great routines that you can share with your family and friends that are wanting energy medicine techniques. And again, all these things are helping to increase the flow of energy within our body. So I think it's important for each of us to identify what are the resources that we have and that we have used, that we trust, that we feel good about, and then to share those with others, because I think that there's so much information out there right now, and that when we know that things work, it's important that we can share those with the people who trust us, our clients, our family and friends, and that they will have an opportunity to try those and see what really works for them. As we've noticed here, there's been an improvement with people's ability to breathe with more ease. And so just, you know, even as a little informal pilot study, these resources work. These acupressure points work. And part of it is that we're taking the time to hold them So I hope this has been helpful. If people have questions, you're welcome to get in touch with me or actually any of the Soul Lightning Acupressure practitioners who use this work on a regular basis. I think it's important that we're putting ourselves out there in the world right now to share acupressure as a valid resource for those who are having difficulty breathing and are worried and concerned and fearful, and to let them know that there are simple tools that will help them to stay calm and not panic and to be able to breathe with ease. So thank you all for coming today. If there's any last minute comments or questions or resources that you want to share, go ahead and unmute yourself. And we'll just take, I wanted to end right at 3, but I'll just take a few minutes here if people want to say anything.
Hey, Deanna, I just want to clarify on the link that I shared. This is Beth.
Yeah.
I just received that this morning through AHN, no, not through AHNA, sorry, through the journal that we published our last study in just about a year ago.
Oh,
So yeah, so a lot of you might have also received it because you might have been put on that mailing list when that study got published last year.
so that's Journal of Alternative and Complementary Medicine.
Right. So this appears to be a registry that's being started to,
Good.
because we don't have a lot of evidence for these all kinds of alternative therapies. This is a registry that they're asking any kind of practitioner to use as if they're working. It is particular to COVID-19. So if you are working in any way with COVID-19 patients, even those that maybe haven't been tested but are suspected to have COVID, I don't recommend that people do that in person at this time. But if you're a doctor or a practitioner who is of necessity working with these patients, or I think if you're doing distance sessions with them, then take a look at this and consider registering as a way to build a body of evidence for these alternative and complementary therapies. And if you have an acupuncturist or naturopath or other practitioner that you see or work with, you might want to just share this registry with them. So that's what that is. Thank you for letting me do that.
You're welcome, and I will send that out also in the email that I send to people. So thank you for sharing that resource.
Yeah, and this was great today. Thank you so much for doing it. Well done.
Thanks.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you all for your feedback. And any other last minute questions or other comments? All right, look for an email from me in the next half a day or so, and I will get these links out, and the recording, I'll leave it up for a week for you to listen to, and then I'm not sure what I'll do with it at that point. So maybe put it on my website, we'll see. All right, thank you. Oh, one more thing I was gonna say, we do this work for free as a service, so there's always encouraging people if you feel like you benefited from it. There's multiple organizations that can benefit from it. Soul Lightning Acupressure, I've learned a lot of what I know and have been inspired through Soul Lightning, so that's one option. You're always welcome to go to my website and buy me a cup of coffee. But just think about what are the ways that we can continue to share and spread what we know and be of service in the world. So thank you very much. So namaste, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Deanna. Beautifully done.
Thank you, Deanna.
Good to see everyone.
What's
Hi,
your
Missy.
website? What's your website, Deanna?
My website is dwhealingarts.com.
Right.
So, thanks.